Okay, we are now live.
Great, thank you. Okay, well, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you all for joining us this afternoon. I will go ahead and call this special session and the Auburn Economic Workshop to order. If you would all join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. If you don't have a flag, I've conveniently placed one here in my office, so if you'll join me. I pledge allegiance to the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, great. So this is a formal meeting of the City Council, and since we do have all of our City Council members, I'm going to go ahead and ask Amy to do the roll call.
Sure. Councilmember Amara.
Present.
Mackey.
Here.
Spokley.
Here.
And Mayor Berlant.
I am here, very much. Thank you. We'll go ahead and take public comment. This is the time provided so that any persons may speak to the council on an item that is not on the agenda. We do ask that you make your comments as brief as possible. In this virtual meeting, though, we are accepting online comments and previous voicemails. Amy, was anything received to you at this meeting?
I did not receive anything ahead of time. I am checking right now to make sure we're not receiving anything live, and we do not have any public comment.
And Amy, in case anybody does want to comment throughout the meeting, can you just, for those who are watching the stream, let them know where they can send those emails to?
Absolutely. Yeah, we will accept public comments at publiccomment@auburn.ca.gov anytime during this meeting.
Great. Thank you very much, Amy. So we'll go ahead and get started. We'll start off with some introductions. We did call up the council. We do have members from all of our business associations, as well as the Chamber of Commerce and the County Economic Development. So I will just go through each of these and let you guys self-introduce yourself. Allison, thanks for joining us. We'll start with the Auburn Chamber of Commerce.
Great. Thank you, Daniel. My name is Allison Harvey. I am this year's president of the Auburn Chamber of Commerce. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us. We'll move on to the Auburn Business Association. Addison.
Good afternoon. Addison Brown here, president of the Downtown Association. Also happy to be here to try and get things moving forward in the right direction.
Great. Jordan, Old Town Business Association.
Yeah, Jordan Minier, Business Association, owner of the Poor Choice in Old Town. Excited to talk about what we can do, next steps.
Great. Auburn Art Pro Business Park Association, Marjorie.
Marjorie Cook, president of the Auburn Business Park Association. Glad to be here and to help get the stores back open.
Great. Bob, I'll let you go ahead and introduce yourself.
Bob Richardson, Auburn City Manager.
And then we're also joined by Sherry Conway, the Director of Economic Development. Sherry, though I guess did your self-introduction. I'll let you.
I'll just remute myself. Hi, everyone. I'm with Placer County Office of Economic Development. And thank you for inviting me today.
Great. Well, thank you guys for all coming together. I know this is kind of an awkward world that we're living in to kind of have to virtually communicate, but I thought it was a good opportunity for all of us to be able to talk, hear directly some of the concerns that you have. Obviously, the council has been getting a lot from residents, our city staff, Bob, county staff, including Sherry, have been working behind the scenes every single day since this pandemic hit. And so I thought it was just a good time for us to communicate and maybe figure out if there's some more formal things that we can do. Also communicate directly to the business leaders of the things that are happening that Bob or the county and even myself that we are participating in, just so that we can ensure we have open communication. Bob and I actually and Sherry just got off the phone with our county health officer. So over the last couple weeks now, we've been holding weekly conference calls, all of the city mayors, city managers, along with county representatives, both in economic development, health and human services, also the CEO's office. And so we just kind of got an update from the county health officer and just kind of hit the news here as of late. And that included the fact that Governor Newsom earlier this week announced that he would be beginning the process to allow counties to move to what he calls stage 2 of the resilience roadmap. It is a very complicated stage 2 because it's not just you enter stage 2 and that's it. There's really multi-phases of stage 2. And I think we can talk a little bit more of what that means. But the biggest item is that stage 2 of the roadmap moves us beyond just essential services and begins to reopen a lot of consumer-based businesses with proper precautions being taken. But as we talked with the health officer today, in the multi kind of phased of stage 2, the first stage of stage 2 that goes into effect today by the state is allowing for retail curbside and also increasing the use of manufacturing. So those are really the two main items. And Bob, I'll give you, after I kind of go through an overview of what we heard today, I'll let Bob also fill any holes or gaps on kind of the latest that we got. Again, it's such a dynamic situation. And one of the things that Sherry may share with you is her team has been working so hard that everything they did the last 2 weeks, more or less, kind of got thrown out the door when the state kind of changed paths. And again, I'll let Sherry share some of that. And we had some conversations about how we can still use that work. But the second kind of, and I'll call it the second phase of stage 2, is once the counties get an acceptance of a variance, which our county has applied for. Our health officer and county officials will be meeting with the state tomorrow afternoon, is their appointment, where they'll be presenting their plan of the measures that the county is putting in place. Also, a report on the metrics that are required by the state in order to move into this advanced stage 2 county by county. Some of the additional items, and Sherry, you probably miss out a couple, but some of the other items in kind of the later part of stage 2 with that variance includes shopping malls, car washes, tanning, landscaping, office-based businesses with precautions in place, even dining at restaurants, which was a big topic earlier today. And I know several of you who own restaurants, we can have plenty of conversation on what that looks like. Outdoor museums, and then, and this is one my wife is watching very closely, as many children are at home, modified school and child care as well. And so what that looks like, there's still some details to be worked out. So real quick, as I mentioned, the county is moving forward tomorrow, requesting this variance from the state to allow additional business restrictions be lifted on those things that I just rattled off. But some of the requirements the state is putting on counties, including ours, before that happens, includes items like looking at, how stable are we with our new COVID-19 patients? And there's a population methodology to determine, are we actually decreasing, our rate of spread, as well as have there been fatalities in the past 14 days? So right now we do meet that, but that is a requirement in order to move into this phased stage 2. Looking at protective gear for essential workers, specifically first responders and healthcare medical workers, that seems to be taken care of. Testing capacity. It was announced earlier this week that in addition to our hospitals and other healthcare providers, the county has increased testing at 2 locations in the county, one in Roseville, one in Kings Beach and Tahoe region. And then even there's going to be some future access for our residents up in Grass Valley. The state requires that we are able to perform 600 tests a day. But as we discussed in detail, and this is part of the discussion that the county will be having with the state, is it's not just the capacity of tests. Can we provide 600 tests? It also includes, are we actually testing 600 people? And they've kind of gotten into, who they're testing, the essential workers, obviously people who have symptoms. Recently, it was announced, though, that any resident, even if they don't show symptoms, can make an appointment at one of those 2 testing locations to be tested. But we have no control over who's going to choose to be tested, and how do we meet that volume of 600 a day is one of those discussions that we'll occur tomorrow. The next piece is contact tracing, and this is again where the county is able to do surveillance on new tests to quickly try to figure out who and where contact may have occurred. we can start to connect those that may have come in contact and then may have tested positive or may have gotten the disease and need some testing. And the county is going to be required to have 60 contact tracers. It was our understanding today the county had no concerns about meeting that. The state will be also providing some assistance there, rediverting state employees from other non-essential work functions to do this. And last week I offered up to the county to make sure they're communicating with us at the city if there's we don't want to be held back because we don't have enough contract tracers. And so if we need cities to step up and provide support, let us know. At this point, the county is taking care of that item as well. There's a number of other items. Just one other that I'll mention here is hospital capacity is another requirement. We are within those standards. In Placer County, the baseline for hospital beds between our varying hospitals is 500. And then those hospitals have increased capacity and are able to actually double that number to 1,000. So our hospital capacity is pretty strong right now within Placer County. In fact, the current statistics show there are 10 positive patients in our hospitals. 4 of those are in ICU. So, that's 4 too many and 10 too many in the hospital. But statistically speaking, when you look at the county population, that is a smaller number that, again, meets the state criteria to move into that phase 2 item. Lots of discussion, and I don't want to keep talking, but just trying to fill you in. Some of the areas that I expressed some concern, specifically related to our skilled nursing facilities in Auburn, and making sure that in these areas where we have high-risk patients, just like we had last weekend at the Auburn Ravine Terrace, that we're doing everything possible to keep those residents safe and those employees safe. And so the county's developing a surveillance plan, working closely with skilled nursing facilities to ensure that they are continuously testing patients. In fact, they're going to be doing testing 20% of each of those facilities, as well as all of the employees. And if they get any positive hits, like they did in the case of one of our skilled nursing facilities, they'll go in then and test all of the patients. And if you haven't heard, over the weekend, we did have 10 residents of the Auburn Ravine Terrace and then 4 employees test positive, but all of them are, getting good care. So that's kind of a quick overview of at least what, the discussions Bob and myself are having with our county leaders and our health officer. We can go on a little bit later and answer more questions, but I wanted to turn it over to Bob here to either expand, Bob, on anything that maybe I missed, but also if you could just, for all of us, talk about what you and the city are doing, not just for COVID-19 response, but also some of the recovery efforts.
Sure. It's kind of interesting when you asked me to think this through. Really, we began actively working on this in February when I started receiving phone calls from restaurants. And it was funny, Addison was one of them, that where are the people? You were starting to hear in the news that COVID was starting to creep into the US. And there was vague discussion on the news that, hey, we might have to shut down restaurants, public places. And so Addison and Jordan and I began meeting. And we started talking about this, and it seemed like science fiction at the time. But we sat down and said, okay, if something like this actually occurred, how do we handle it? How do we help get our businesses through this? And it was interesting. The ideas everyone came up with during those initial meetings were very much the things that have carried businesses through to the extent that they have today and become very much mainstream. A lot of it was for the restaurants that we'd develop takeout delivery. We'd create dedicated parking for everybody who remained open. And that was kind of funny because I was looking at the mathematical criteria that would be fair for keeping certain spaces open for takeout and delivery service while still allowing parking in Old Town, downtown districts, when in fact they became vacant completely. But we had a lot of good ideas going on, and they were spreading it out to their business associations and talking to their businesses. One of the interesting things that I've seen that really came out of that is if you look at Old Town has all the restaurants that are currently open in Old Town have been working together in a non-competitive fashion. And so very overtly, they make sure that what they're selling does not overlap. So one is going to sell beer, one is going to sell hard liquor. None of their menus are going to conflict with one another, and it's a very overt thing. They're trying to support one another. And right now, and although I think we've got one kind of on the ropes, most of them believe they're going to be reopening fully here as soon as they can. Very good job. It was getting that communication going early. And in a small town, I think that's the true benefit that we can provide. We can provide personalized service and get people talking in constructive ways far easier than larger jurisdictions. And I think that helped us immensely. And what we were looking at early on, I think the 3 goals were to, one, to reconnect people to Auburn businesses, to provide Auburn businesses with good information, and to connect them to the funding sources that were being made available out there. And we made every effort to do that. And a huge amount of it was doing it in a very personal way. In fact, we worked it out so you can actually hit every business in Old Town in about 40 minutes on foot, and you can do it in about an hour and a half in downtown. And so if you don't get involved in discussions, which we always did, and that's what we were really trying to do. We're also trying to let people know that we were available to help provide them with information. So everybody, on every one of our reports that went out to businesses, that were a huge amount of them were hand delivered, a lot of them were emailed, but it always had business card and contact information. So people could come, give me a call, and we could talk things through. Even though the county did a very, very good job of trying to be very consistent and clear with their communication, there was so much information coming in from so many directions over these weeks that there was constant misinterpretation, confusion. And so what we really tried to do is steer people, provide whatever clarity we could, and then steer people to the best websites and the most official websites we could. And so in every one of our reports and everything we emailed out, it was connecting them to where good information was, and good, clear and concise information. On top of that, we right away, as people just drained out of our business districts, we started calling all restaurants in town to determine who was open and to what degree, what services they were providing. If you remember those matrix that went out, those went out within about 10, no, even less than that, about 7 days after closure began. It let our residents know what restaurants were open, what services they provided during what hours. Very helpful. Right after that product was produced and upgraded, we did the same thing with the retailers. Again, we're trying to connect people to businesses in a very awkward environment, and how to they still access folks as best they can. On our Explore Auburn website, we have, throughout the whole duration, we have done stories about businesses, stories about what they're going through. And now we're starting to develop a whole series of stories of people coming out, businesses coming out, what they're doing and how they're doing it. So it's just been a constant flow of information, both back and forth, trying to make sure our businesses get good, timely information, it's accurate, and they're not misinterpreting what's out there. Also interesting, the EDC had released another insert in a very high quality magazine at the Bay Area. And that land, although the contract was let months ago, that hit in the middle of COVID. And a lot of the feedback we've received is very, very strong. 2 things have really occurred. A lot of businesses that have been in the Bay Area were already starting to look to see can we move for quality of life? And I think this has spurred it on that much more. And second is we're finally seeing the technology really can make people work together well over long distances. Zoom was only used a little bit And it's becoming a mainstay overnight. And it's going to start to create all new paradigms for how businesses can work in the long haul. It's going to create tremendous differences in how government works in the long haul as well. We've also been interviewing a lot of our manufacturers out at the air park. Very, very interesting. A lot of those interviews really have been for us in making our financial estimates as to what kind of impacts the city is going to have. But what is so different this time with this downturn versus 2008, 2009 is that it's impacting businesses in very unique ways. We have some businesses that have just remodeled themselves. We have one out there that is producing huge amounts of an alcohol product that is now used as the base for Purell and hand sanitizers. So they've shifted from their existing business to that and bringing more money in. We have some tremendous medical supply companies out there that are really slowing down. And it's because so much of the resources for hospitals nationwide have been focused at COVID. They're not purchasing medical devices for other areas in the medical industry. So they're being impacted that way. Supply chain issues, we're seeing them obviously coming from China, but also a huge number of supply chain issues coming through India. And so everybody has been in this really interesting time of readjustment, but they're doing it. They're making the adjustments, and it's impressive to watch. We've also been following several businesses through the PPP program, the application process, and actually Addison has some fascinating insights in what he went through. You may not want to actually talk about the banks themselves if you discuss that. But really, we have just fielded dozens of personal phone calls and contacts and trying to just make sure that they have good, correct, accurate information that's timely, and that the rumors they pick up out in the street maybe aren't the correct pieces of information. Here's where you go. So that has been a constant all these weeks. Now, mind that during this same time period, we as a city government had all sorts of requirements that we had to follow. So we had to move into essential services mode. So police, fire, utility operations, full bore. We had to furlough most of our employees, only have a bare amount of support services here in City Hall. City Hall's been locked down. You can get development services by appointment only. And then we have slowly been bringing back employees in a wide number of service areas, doing different kinds of work that doesn't require them to be interfacing directly with other employees. Even our public works employees right now, we're working with pretty much our full contingent, but we're having them do work that needs to be done, but they can do individually and independently. So that has worked very, very nicely. So these have been two tracks going on at the same time that it's been interesting, it's been rewarding, but it's been nice working together with the business community. Really, both Jordan, Addison, you guys have been great to work with. And we've figured out as a community, step by step, how to get things going. And Sherry, you've done a heck of a job in the county trying to keep this thing going and pulled together. But it's been fun to watch it at every different level. Everyone's pitching in and getting the job done. So I think with that, Mr. Mayor, that's kind of an overview where we've been, kind of a.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and always appreciate your optimism, Bob. Because we have to kind of work together to get through this, and it's tough times. I've talked to a couple of businesses within our city who are shutting down because of lack of business, and that's their livelihood. And this is a huge inconvenience for many people, but it's also means lack of food on the table for others. And so I appreciate the sentiment of getting everyone together, because it does have some true impacts. That segues really nicely into kind of the county's role here. I mentioned at the beginning that in order for us to really be able to move into the state's requirements of reducing some things, the county has had to put together a readiness plan. So Sherry, if I could turn it to you, and maybe you can talk a little bit about what your staff have been working on, and then where you kind of see us going, and what support your folks and what you're seeing can provide, and that guidance to our business owners who are struggling to even keep up with information of, what type of business can open tomorrow, things like that. So Cheryl, I'll let you jump in here.
Oh, you and Bob did a great job of teeing it up. Does anyone else feel like 1 hour in this world feels like 8 hours, like in a normal world? Some days I'm just like swimming through caramel, it's mind boggling. And yet while that's happening, things are changing at the speed of light. So it's this really weird juxtaposition that we're in. And so just to back up a little bit, so 6 weeks ago, when we saw, what was coming down, and the first directive that Dr. Sisson put forth a mere 4 hours before the state's order, distinguishing between the two, we kind of jumped into full mode, and we pivoted the Placer Business Resource Center's focus. So we, one of the programs that we've developed over the last few years is the BRC, the Business Resource Center. We are a satellite office of the Small Business Development Center, so we officially have that capacity. Our brick and mortar facilities down in Rockland on Sunset, we have a satellite facility up in Tahoe. So as soon as we saw businesses shutting their doors, from the minute we heard the first CARES package was forthcoming, we immediately ramped up our staffing and our relationship with SBDC to be able to connect those businesses just in the very early hours, in fact, with those resources. And if you're not familiar with the SBDCs, they're funded in part by the SBA and funded in part by the state. And they're throughout the country. I'm from New York, I worked with the SBDC all the time in New York State. So we were really able and really fortunate. I want to kind of plug this relationship that we have, because unlike other jurisdictions and other counties who are served by an SBDC, they have no relationship. And we did, because we have business advisors in our facility at the Business Resource Center every day, all day, either teaching workshops or meeting with clients, and it's all free. So I wanted to just put that in context, because as soon as I could see, the walls starting to fall, we immediately met with SBDC and pivoted. So no more in-person workshops, but we were getting hundreds, as I'm sure you were, hundreds of calls a day. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. The SBA website's crashed. I can't get a loan. The PPP thing is blowing up, unemployment, all of those questions that you guys have fielded over all of these many weeks. What we really deliberately tried to do from the very first days was connect those folks who were seeking guidance, grab their hand. Because I got to tell you, the amount of human, absolute heartbreaking stories that we heard, and we're still hearing every single day. Folks were so happy, first of all, to get a hold of somebody. So my staff or myself field those calls, listen to what it is they were talking about, and then make the determination that perhaps they could be well served by a business advisor with SBDC. Connect them, get them an appointment. And the way that works, that's a confidential, no cost, one-on-one, where the advisor looks at your financials, looks at your cash flow, and then, based on what that personal and individual situation is, maybe recommends, yeah, you should go for the PPP or this or that, or I'll help you do the application. So we felt like at the time where everything was just on fire, at least that was one constant, that people that could at least get to us, we could connect them to a business advisor and maybe bridge the gap financially. So then fast forward a few more weeks, we stood up a countywide, and some of you are on that call, Wednesday economic development stakeholder call. So invited were each of the 6 cities, as well as all of the chamber representatives, and even some of our downtown associations, as you move kind of up the hill into the less populated areas. And it became really clear that we needed to engage our businesses and try to develop ahead of the state some kind of protocol or guidelines, because at some point this was going to be over, and we could cry in our soup, or we could start to look forward. And that's what we did. From that very large group, we sort of broke it into the South Placer, the Foothills, and the Tahoe region. Tahoe is a very unique economy, as you know. Their industry sectors look a little bit different than down here. So working through all of that, and this is how I mean fast, slow. Not even a week ago, we put together some guidelines based on input that we got from many of you all on this call, many of our partners in South Placer, and lots of the folks in Tahoe. We tried to throw together what we were thinking. And again, I'm not in the governor's inner circles. We had no idea what this stage 2 would look like or when it would be revealed, but we really felt the ramp up. And I used to own a small business, so I get it. You don't flip the switch. You have no supply. The supply chain is broken. You have no inventory. You laid off all your employees. You can't just, governor says tomorrow, hit go. So I really felt that it was important to put out some guidelines with all kinds of disclaimers, that the state could supersede this, but let's get something out into the hands of at least some folks in our community to help them prepare. Well, that was Tuesday of this week. And at noon of this week, the governor comes out with this, very robust set of guidelines for most of the businesses, not all, that have been articulated to be a part of this stage 2. And so at that point, we were like, why do we just do all this? But it's all good. It's all good because actually, if you've read it and if you haven't, I encourage you to really go into the roadmap on the state site and sector by sector. There are printable checklists with all of those measures, those protocols that each of those sectors will need to do. It's not an option, will need to do to adhere to the state's order. Because as you know, the public health officer's order has expired. So we are now all under the state's order until such time that we can seek this variance. So I think a couple of things. We want to make sure that as the call that we were both on, your mayor and your city manager just now, we heard from Jeff Brown, our HHS director. It's going to be really critical in the days, hours, because life right now is in hours, days, and even weeks ahead, that we link arms as a business community and make sure that as the county does its work to advance this attestation, which is what the call I'm getting on next, to prepare to submit and seek that variance from the state, it's really carrot and stick. If we can receive that variance, but we behave irresponsibly, they will rescind that variance probably much quicker than they will allow it. So I think important to know, as painful as this phase 1 of stage 2, which began today, which is almost irrelevant to me, curbside retail, people have been doing that since day 1. It doesn't really scratch the itch, and I get it. But if we don't adhere to these checklists, these guidelines as they unfold, and as we receive permission to have this variance, we start to unroll full stage 2, which does include restaurants. So pay attention to Tuesday if you are in the food service business, because the governor will be coming out with very detailed protocol for our restaurants, not bars, not clubs, but our food in dining. So Tuesday will be that next breadcrumb that he drops. And this has been frustrating for me, is he's dropping these little breadcrumbs, and I get it. It's a big task, but this doesn't help our businesses prepare to reopen. Give us the loaf of bread. We'll stand back and we won't eat it. But if we don't even know what the bread looks like, it's really hard to prepare. So that's really been frustrating for all of us. So a couple things. We've got to make sure that right now we adhere to the very limited operation, which is manufacturing, logistics, and curbside retail that began today. So I've been in touch with Air International. They're ramping up. They've been ready to ramp up for weeks, but they've played by the rules in spite of getting an enormous amount of pressure from their client. We need everyone to do that so that we can receive this variance. Fingers crossed. I know we're all working all weekend. I have to write it's like a term paper. You have to write sections and there's data. I mean, it's like, oh my gosh. But I'm confident when Dr. Sisson has her pre-consultation meeting tomorrow at 3, we'll know how likely it is that we'll get the approval for the variance. And once we get that approval, we need to be mindfully moving into full stage 2, not 0 to 60. And those state guidelines do provide a lot of information for businesses, particularly in retail. Absent from the site, as you saw, is restaurant. There's 0 right now that speaks to restaurants. So look to Tuesday for him to come out with those detailed protocols. It's more challenging, obviously, when you consider the layout and you add things like booths. How do you separate people with back-to-back? So restaurants will be challenging. I'm trying to think what else. I mentioned in the last call, we're getting a lot of calls about if and when in-person dining is allowed. The assumption is there will be very specific seating limitations that come from the state, whether it's 30, 50, 80, no one knows. But how do restaurants get creative and perhaps spill over to the outdoors in cities or even in a county where they're not allowed to do that per their zoning requirements? So I'm encouraging my own planning director, as well as all of the cities, to start to think about some emergency amendment to your zoning ordinance to perhaps allow more outdoor dining that normally, maybe wouldn't have been in your general plan. I think that's, I'll talk all day, but so I'll be quiet, and then I'll try to answer any questions you all may have. And I just want to thank you guys for being Ophir. I live in Ophir, so Auburn's my town. I don't know if you know that about me. And it's just devastating to me that everything that I need and want to do and depend on doing right now, I can't do in my town. And it's so heartbreaking. So I'll be quiet now, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Sherry. Before I see if anybody has any questions, we move on to each of the associations. I do want to show you real quick, if you have not seen it, and let's see if I can do this gracefully. There it is. The governor did release his resilience roadmap that has a lot of good resources on it. So if you go to, hopefully you can all see that on your screens. Oh, Amy says yes. COVID19.ca.gov/roadmap. And in here has a lot of more information about the multiple different stages. But here's where I think there's some meat for you and your businesses is the industry guidelines that Sherry had mentioned. And each one of them has protocols and checklists, and they're broken up, as Sherry was mentioning, by sectors. And so you can see this. So if if one of your businesses in your associations or for the chamber, fall under one of these, they can click on it, hit checklist guidance. Now, one thing, and Sherry and I have had this conversation, I think what the county had built, not knowing all the parameters the state was going to set, was very thorough and very clean and easy to use, where the state is very thorough, but it's so much longer. I mean, you can see this is a 3 to 4 page item. And so there's a lot of things in these checklists. So just wanted to point that out as a great resource. Again, COVID19.ca.gov/roadmap. I'll stop sharing. And before we move on to the chambers, did anybody have any questions for Sherry or any input you wanted to convey to her?
I do.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just on the printout that you can print for those checklists, there's things that, implementing plans and training. Is this something we can put templates online that's easy to download that are, whether you're retail or warehouse or, a car wash, it's a kind of a fill in the blank so that it's easy for them to do what's being required in this stage 2?
Sorry, I always forget to unmute. I know with the North Lake Tahoe Resort Association, as an example, they intend to Tahoeize this. And as long as you are at least as strict, as prescriptive, but not less, I don't see why you wouldn't want to make it easy. In fact, that's the next thing that I'm going to have my team work on, is kind of set aside the work that we did 3 days ago and take these guidelines and make them easy for people to find. by the time somebody navigates through the state's website, they've completely lost interest. So I would encourage all of us to find ways to make it as easy as possible on each of your respective web pages, through your social media platforms, as many different forms of communication to get people these checklists. And right now, remember, it's really limited. It's curbside retail. So but again, folks have to ramp up. So if I'm a retail owner, or I'm trying to think something, so restaurants will be coming forward in stage 2. You will want to have those checklists out there so folks can be preparing. Acquiring that PPE is going to be I think the big challenge. Everybody wants masks. Everybody wants plexiglass. Everybody wants gloves right now. And it's not cheap and it's not quick. So that's one of the reasons I think it's important to have those guidelines out in the community. But the challenge, of course, is once you get those guidelines out into the community, people immediately think they can open and they can't. So I'm really hoping the county is successful with this variance. And once it is, we will make sure that we're talking to your leadership to have you guys promote those.
So my question was more like, right, I'm looking at the one for retail. And one of the things you have to have is a written worksite specific plan. Now, it doesn't make sense for every town and city in Placer County to have their own template on their own sites. I would think Placer County could do a worksite specific plan that is a template, so that whether I own, Tap and Vine, or I own, Jordan's business, that it's easy to fill it out and say, I have my worksite specific plan. I'm one step closer to opening.
That's a great question. I honestly, because these are
county could do.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a really good question. I think a lot of conversation right now, since this just dropped yesterday, is if the county no longer has an order and the state has the order, and these protocols are the states, then we have to just kind of pivot to those specific guidelines, those specific checklists. And I don't know that the county would want to jump in and create a template. I don't know. That's a really good question. I have to think about that.
Sure, at least maybe
every single business has to recreate the mousetrap. Why not just say, here's the mousetrap?
Yeah, it's a great point, Marjorie. And Sherry, maybe as you're working with the other cities and the other chambers, if you come across a strong template that can be customized, maybe you could share that. And all, as we go through each of the associations, if any of you have already put together a plan or experienced somebody who has, I think, Marjorie, it's a valid point. Why have the city have 400 different plans if for a retail it's going to be pretty close to being the same thing, and put together the bones of a structure that can be shared. So I've written that down, Marjorie. Maybe we can all follow back up and see what we can help each other so that we can provide that assistance. Did anybody else have any questions for Sherry? Addison, I think you're still on mute.
Okay. Yeah, no, I've been doing some research online just from other states. Not that that's going to be the same as California, because California is always more difficult, but there's a lot of good information, especially for businesses like mine, that other states have already put together that will help us kind of get through that. But I do agree with Margie, is let's make this as easy as possible for the businesses. We've got a lot of other stuff to focus on right now to even get back to semi where we kind of were, having to work on something else is kind of difficult too. So I think making that easy is very important.
I did the same thing. Any additional questions for Sherry before we move on to some association reports and questions from you? Yeah, go ahead, Matt.
I have a quick question, and maybe this is more appropriate to the business owners that are on the call. But Sherry, is Placer County doing anything to help the businesses, the small businesses, acquire the various requirements that are in these guidelines, the PPE, the hand sanitizers, because I can tell you my business is struggling to get some of these products. Some are more readily available, but some of the things that are in the guidelines that came down from the state for phase 2 opening are things that we've had on back order. Thermometers, we can't get them. And we've had orders in for literally a month and a half. And our projected delivery date is like at the end of June or something like that. So is there anything that we as a larger collective, the county, can do to help out our small businesses acquire some of these things that will be required for reopening?
This is coming up quite a bit. The idea of a bulk purchase, perhaps lowering the cost. But right now, and Dr. Sisson got this question on our last call. No, the county is not at this point, or the board has not decided this is something they would do. Kind of leaving businesses sort of to rely on either their own creative, or maybe band together. And Auburn might be a community where y'all want to use your associations to do some bulk purchasing. But no, unfortunately, it's going to be very challenging if particularly as the governor reveals more information on Tuesday about the restaurants that I assume may be tied to a more robust requirement of PPE and particularly temperature taking. I don't know how you adhere to those protocols if you cannot physically get that equipment. It is very challenging, and I hear about it now every day. But the county's even we can't reopen our own offices without this equipment. And I heard from Dr. Sisson yesterday, we ordered 250 thermometers, but we have not even gotten them yet. So yeah. But one more thing I wanted to add, we put together a list of vendors that we use, that the county uses, and I'll share that out. I'll share it with Mayor and Bob. My request to you all is, if you have local folks who are providers of some of this equipment or material, let me know. I mean, the danger in a list is that just about the time the ink dries, it's obsolete, right? But we want to try to, in the same with the city, try to list those vendors who we know we trust, who we do business with already, that then we can share with our business community so that they can start to ramp up. Because if you need 3 weeks to get masks, and suddenly you hear that next week you can open only if you have masks, it's a problem. But no, we're not doing any bulk order purchases.
So a quick follow-up to that, and maybe this is directed to Allison. I was on a call earlier this week with SACOG, a regional organization. The Sacramento Metro Chamber is coordinating significant bulk purchases. They're working with Pride Industries on all of these things that I think are going to be critical for us to get our small businesses back open. So I just want to mention that to Allison. I forget the gal's name who's their CEO, but
Amanda Blackwood.
Yeah.
They're working very diligently to get these major orders, because that's the only thing that these suppliers are paying attention to. They've got states, countries, huge orders that they pay attention to. A guy like me with a small business trying to call them, they're not even going to pay attention to me. But maybe the 6-county region can coordinate some large purchases of the equipment that I think is going to be critical for all of our small businesses to open. And then one last thing, I just want to comment on what Sherry just said about the local businesses that have kind of tailored their business to help treat the COVID thing. I've got about 70,000 square feet of office space down in Sacramento at my headquarters. We went out early and got quotes for disinfecting those offices. And the quotes we got were between $20,000 and $25,000 for them to come in and disinfect the offices if we had a COVID case happen in our office. I've got a local vendor who does the same thing, same fogging equipment, and it's literally a fraction of the cost. So I'll get you that contractor's information. They're certified by the EPA. They're using the appropriate chemicals and things. And I was very happy to find it. So we got it to our facilities folks, but I'll share that with you guys so you guys can maybe publicize it.
Any other questions for Sherry?
I have a question.
Go ahead,
Sherry,
Jordan.
just thinking about the, it seems like it's a moving target, right? I mean, there's a lot looking out over the list of what's required. It seems difficult at best. The thing that's concerning is that if one of these ICU patients were to pass away, God forbid, we're now in a situation where we go back to square one. I mean, is that right? It's all null and void, everything else.
You know, and you jump in, Daniel or Bob, you both were on the call. It's an amazingly complex array of metrics and data sets. And I won't pretend that I am Dr. Sisson here. I don't think to get the variance, we need to not have had a death within the previous 14 days. But the natural question is, if we are awarded the variance and then someone dies, do we lose that variance? And I didn't get that sense from Dr. Sisson, and I'm on a lot of calls with her all day long. I don't think it's that black and white, but I will tell you that if we don't adhere to, as the state moves, allows us to move into stage 2, and we do have a flare up, for lack of a better word, then we will lose it. And so I think it's really important that we self-regulate and we, exhibit good behavior. But I think our caseload, all of those, there's 6 metrics, I think we're good in many of them. So I don't think one death necessarily would cause us to lose the variance, but it would, right now, before we've been awarded it, it would cause us to have to wait another 14 days. So, I mean, it's very scary to think that there are 4 people in the ICU right now, because that means they are very sick.
Yeah. Then the follow-up to that would be, now we've created a police state, right? And to where we are now required to be good, quote unquote, whatever that means. So now we've created this opportunity to either be watched, or there's people who are narking, or what is this, good? Because we cannot keep, if a virus is there, it's there. We cannot keep this from happening. Obviously we can argue all day about whether or not even quarantining is helping, whatever. We know they've given us guidelines, but when there's a flare up, quote unquote, like there was in our elderly facility, now what is that policing? Is the county, am I worried about the county walking in and the health officers walking in, and now they're going through a checklist and I'm not fulfilling every one of these checklists in that moment, therefore I'm out? And what does that look like as far as the policing, if that makes sense?
Right, because restaurants right now are currently not allowed as part of
Sure.
state.
I mean, when
but
that,
down the line, I
retail.
think that's been a lot of conversation that Jeff Brown has been addressing. There is absolutely no plan for environmental health to be dispatching narcs or inspectors that wouldn't normally be, inspecting your facility. That's my understanding. I do and have heard already that the ABC has come down on a few facilities in our county in the last week that chose to open up. So that wasn't the county, that was, obviously a state agency. And that was something that had been talked about, and they tested it, and now they're shut down again. So, I don't know that it's the county's going to be in that role, but I think the state will still have some leverage. It's interesting because the governor sort of kicked it to regionalism because there was a lot of conversations, but they still ultimately hold all of the puppet strings, right?
Yeah.
And so they can grant us this variance, but they can very quickly take it back if we are not following the rules. So then you have to just, I think, decide we're gonna play by the rules or potentially lose this opportunity. So
Gary, I don't want to sidetrack this too much, but didn't the Board of Supervisors vote 5-0 to send a very strongly worded letter to the governor's office, and with the threat of a meeting early next week, an emergency meeting with potential litigation if the governor doesn't loosen up the ties to the county? I mean, that's kind of what's being reported, right?
Yeah, I think the resolution's on our website. You might want to take a look at it. But they did take an action at the board meeting on Tuesday along those lines.
If I could add
Sherry,
real quick.
Sherry, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I just wanted to close out Jordan's question, because there was a lot of discussion with the cities, and I think the Health and Human Services Director was pretty clear to the cities that they need our help, and in turn, really your help as business associations, the chambers, to really figure out how can we best educate. And there was never a discussion from the county perspective that I heard as far as enforcement. I think Sherry's right on. I've heard, the items about ABC coming out. I've heard items of some of the different Department of Consumer Affairs licensing boards discussing suspending licenses from the state, but at least from the county perspective, and then down to the city perspective. And I don't want to speak for Bob, but I don't think that there's any direction right now for us as a local government to come out and enforce these items. I think it's going to be more upon us and you guys to help us ensure that we're as compliant in this, and I'll use your words, police state as possible, so that we can continue on a high projection, trajectory of continuing to open up more. And we can debate all day, and I'm happy to, whether or not it's right or wrong. But I think the bottom line that was conveyed to the cities today was work with your business associations, help them help their businesses so that we can stay as compliant as possible, so that we don't affect additional things. So I don't know if that helps, but
Yeah, that helps.
Education over enforcement.
Yeah, that helps.
Sandy, go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, no. On the same line, Sherry, my question is, in my business personally, I have not worked for 2 months. So completely shut down, no income. And a lot of it, I could begin working, but it's the comfort level of people. And I guess my question is, Sherry, I think your approach and what I hear today is that we're going to approach this cautiously and follow the rules. And I appreciate that. Is there anything else we can do to help increase the comfort level as a city or as people? What can we do to make people feel like it is safe and we want you to come into our city? And our numbers are low compared to even Santa Barbara. So, do you have anything for us to do? And I do really like what you said in terms of having an emergency amendment and allow outdoor dining. We do, if there's going to be spacing, Auburn needs to do something to create space. And I guess we talked to legal about, putting more tables on the sidewalks and almost into the road. Maybe not, but maybe not into the road. But I do think that I personally would like to know how we can impart that information to people that, we are going to approach it safely, and we are a safe community right now. We're going to do everything we can. It's comfortable. Come in. Do you have any suggestions?
Well, what I really liked, one of the things I really did like about the governor's press conference yesterday is he pointed again to those checklists. Yes, some of them are several pages, some are just one. If a proprietor chooses to not only, check those and adhere to those different boxes, and they can post that visibly, I, as a customer, I, as a resident, might have that extra level of confidence that I can go in and exercise my purchase power. If I see that and I know, like Cal OSHA, wow, okay, that's got my attention. That must mean that this business is really trying to be responsible. I now feel better about, I don't know about you all, but in the very beginning of this, there were sort of some grocery stores that were doing a better job than others. And I had less consumer confidence with those grocery stores that I saw taking no effort. And so I do think, because it's a standardized checklist of every retail, once we're fully into stage 2, opted to post that. And that does send a very strong message to your customer that, oh, I saw that in that other shop. Oh, okay, I saw that in a restaurant. It's just a suggestion. And the other thing about zoning, I will say, because I'm a recovering planner. I mean, there are other things in your code, like maybe A-frame signs. No one likes those. There's the sandwich board signs. Most jurisdictions don't really allow them. Maybe during a window of time, you relax those rules to allow some of our proprietors to get that drive-by traffic. I mean, there's lots of things that, you know, you might want to think about enacting as a short-term amendment, or because we're going to need every creative way, and you guys are the brain power to not only get back up, but to instill that consumer confidence, to really broadcast, we are open, please come. And you know, you guys know how to do that better than I.
Thank you for that, Sherry. I just want to do a quick check. We are at 3 o'clock. There's no need to cut off the discussion, but if anybody does need to leave because it was 3, let me know and we can move to you first. But I want to take Sandy's question and turn it around, Bob, for you, and actually all of the associations, in the fact that Bob has been thinking about a number of these items. In fact, before the governor came out with, you know, what are some local ordinances that are hurdles we're preventing right now that, you know, are preventing some easy, you know, of getting business back on track, whether it be outdoor dining, the signage, and others. Bob, I don't know if we need to spend too much time right now, but maybe following up for our city council meeting on Monday, you could discuss some of the variances that you're already doing as far as areas where we're not enforcing, i.e. signage, but then some of the discussion as far as additional outdoor dining, that we have ordinances in place that we could you know, temporarily lift in order to allow it. And then I guess I would turn it around to the associations, you know, today, if you have thoughts, but even moving forward, if there are hurdles that are under local ordinances, but even state ones that maybe we can advocate for you, bring those up to us, because I think that's going to be an important one for us to be flexible during this time. So I'll circle back 3 o'clock. Is there anybody who has to leave? If not, then I will just kind of start going down each of the associations, letting you speak, letting you ask any questions. Hearing that everyone looks like we can go a little bit over, I'll just go in order. And Allison, why don't we start with you? Auburn. Oh, I just lost Allison. Why don't we start with the Downtown Business Association? Addison, thoughts, ideas, comments, issues? Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I've spoken with Bob a couple times in regards to some outdoor dining areas that could become available. I mean, we are totally open to every option, whether it's closing down streets, certain areas. I mean, I know that our board is very flexible, and we want to, you know, our goal is to try and make the people of Auburn, that's essentially who we're here for, comfortable. And so I'm totally open to hearing what you guys have to say about allowing that. I know from my perspective, and I urge other businesses to do the same, as we are in these kind of going through these new phases and getting variances, inch into this, be careful, don't overbuy, don't over purchase. You know, let's see where this goes, because just because we're adhering to it doesn't mean someone else is. And so I just, you know, I know how expensive it is firsthand to start up again. And so I want people to be careful. But other than that, you know, I myself have had a lot of other things going on, and I've been a little bit disconnected with the board. I know that Jordan and I are working together. Marjorie, we want to get you involved in this also. I think we've already talked about it on, you know, really trying to consolidate as much as we can the business associations, so that we can formulate a common message with common goals, common marketing practice. And I think that kind of really goes back to, you know, our ability to effectively communicate that we are a safe place to be, that we do have businesses that are open, that we are working towards a common goal to keep Auburn beautiful and make it great. So, you know, I think moving forward, Daniel, I'm glad to have you on board. I think that if we work together as a group, we can really, you know, make huge differences, and kind of, you know, bring Auburn to the new age as far as, you know, what, you know, where we are as a group, a business group, to communicate with not only the people inside our town, but everyone outside. So anyway, I have to leave pretty soon because I got to get going for a takeout, but I appreciate all you guys, your time. And I look forward to, you know, maybe getting together with Jordan over the next day or two, so we can put together what was on this call and get it out to our people in the most effective way possible. And so I think our communication could start with that piece. If you understand what I'm saying.
So no, I appreciate that, Addison, and it's on our agenda for Monday to set a public hearing for the business improvement districts. And so I think there's ample time for us to have some discussions of, how do we continue to support you as you guys support each other and support the businesses. So thank you very much for that. Allison, from the Chamber of Commerce, concerns, ideas?
Yeah. So we have lots of really cool ideas, I think, if I do say so myself. I have been talking with Amanda Blackwood, and I am going to the SAC Metro Chamber United meetings weekly. And she, at the last meeting, there was some discussion about bulk purchasing. They haven't really been able to coordinate that quite yet. So I don't know if that's going to be a possibility. But at our most recent project, I guess I would say that the Chamber's been working on is actually getting together a vendor list of local vendors that can assist with a lot of the different areas that are already listed on Placer County's vendor list. So we have our directors working on that, and we are going to be vetting them and seeing if we can find different individuals to assist. I know we have someone in the cleaning area that already has a fogging machine. So that should be an individual that should be able to assist some of our local businesses. We also have been doing seminars. So we've been doing seminars that are timely and relevant to our business members. Our most, the one that's coming up this week will be on cleaning. And it is, I'm looking it up right now, safe working environments and understanding your liabilities. So I, in wearing my other hat as an attorney, will be talking about employer liabilities and bringing back their employees, and then making sure that they're safe and obligations to those employees, OSHA requirements, etc. And then we will have a COVID-19 certified cleaning expert coming in and speaking about how businesses can clean for COVID-19. And that will be Leslie Fields with Leslie's Cleaning Services. And she is also the business that has that fogging machine. So we are trying to provide really relevant information to all of our businesses. And when I say all, I mean every single business in our greater Auburn community, not just chamber members. Everything is open to every business. We wanted to make sure that we can help to make every business, help them to stay here. We don't want to just focus on our members. And we think that's our obligation to the greater good of our community. We've also created a website that is COVID-19 resources, and we link to other resources so our members and again, our greater business community can find as much information as possible in one place. So we'll be linking some of the information that I learned today. We'll be linking to the state page. And if we do get worksheets or specific cleaner information, we will be linking that there too. And then last, we're working on creating a responsibility pledge. And it's an idea that we came up with where we create a pledge that business owners can choose to put outside their business, which is a responsibility pledge that they pledge to be responsible in keeping up to date with all the most recent COVID-19 recommendations, with what our county is requiring for their business to be open, and complying with what our county and state requirements are. And so we're actually working, that's a Chamber United initiative. And so we're working with SAC Metro Chamber and trying to create this responsibility pledge that we can put out there for all business owners to put in their place of business, and use it as a marketing tool to give that confidence to consumers. Hey, we're doing all that we can. We pledge to be responsible. We pledge to keep you safe. And hopefully then we'll allow those consumers to kind of emerge from their cocoon and come out and spend money, knowing that our community finds it important to keep them safe.
Great idea.
Great, thank you, Allison. Is there anything specifically that you guys have identified that you need from the city?
Not that I can think of right now. I just like to try and keep an open line of communication. I am, as many of you know, kind of filling in for our executive director who's on a leave of absence right now. So I'm wearing multiple hats and I'm still trying to run my business too. So I just need to try and keep an open line of communication. If there's anything or anything you want to talk to me about, anything you need help from the chamber with, I would love a phone call so that I can be made aware of it, because sometimes I just miss things if, you know, it's in my peripheral, and I'm only one person. So anything the city can identify that the chamber could be a part of, I would love to hear about it.
Great, thank you for that, Allison. Jordan, how about from you and the Old Town Business Association?
Yeah, so one of the difficulties has been knowing how to communicate when things are changing so quickly. It's been when Bob and Addison and I met early on, we had some really good structure around kind of ways that we could move forward. That changed within about 24 hours. And then kind of reconvened, it changed again. So it's been an issue of trying to just get as much information as we can to our district, but at the same time, that information is so fluid. It's been difficult to nail down a plan, right? So we've benefited from the chamber. My wife got to sit in on the call on the PPP and had a ton of information given there. Bob has been extremely helpful in continuing to give us resources and to kind of remind me where things are going and how they're moving, so that as I speak with people in my district, I can give them some good sense of the way things are moving. One of the things that I think is difficult right now is that this idea of how do we make people feel comfortable, right? So we have a more progressive, I would say, clientele that would be more comfortable listening to mandates from the governor. And so they're going to be less comfortable coming in and getting back to status quo, quote unquote. That creates a conundrum for us that we need to create a space that feels safe for them. But at the same time, we also are trying to communicate in the only way we know how, that it's similar to me, it's Munchausen syndrome, where we've convinced ourselves of a disease that we don't have. And somehow we need to convince and show the people in our community that we can be thankful and blessed that we didn't get it as severely as other places. That to me should show gratitude, and it should show thankfulness, and that should show in us now coming out in safe ways and somehow communicating that to each other. So somehow in this, there's a message that we need to communicate as well, along with, yes, we're doing things clean. Yes, we're caring about social distancing. Yes, we're doing all that we can to follow these guidelines. But at the same time, we are unique where we live. We are unique in the way that this thing played out in our district and in our area and in our region. And we should be moving forward and beginning to establish some normalcy. And so that's been the message that we're trying to portray as a business. But as soon as you portray a message, it's going to be taken right or wrong or bad or good, period. So we're doing that in limited ways, and we're trying to communicate less than we typically would. So that's the other part that I would just throw out, is that as I speak with people in my district, I think less communication actually is more effective in this time, because when we communicate, there's lots of opportunity for people to say, that's a terrible way of going about it, or that's a great way of going about it. And there's these polarizing views. So somehow leading is, to me, more of that silent leadership rather than vocal, this is the stance we're taking, this is what we're intending, and trying to be a little less vocal about it and just lead by example. I think that looks like empathy. And so as I'm talking with our district, it's how are you empathetic to people and thinking that there's real fear, there's real pain. There's also the other side that is completely indifferent to the whole thing. And so somehow we exist here in the middle, and we love to think that everyone's polarizing, but they're not. And so how can we be empathetic to one another and love people more? And so that's really the message that we're trying to push, is that it's a way for us all to come together and to love each other in a unique way, and to create a unique community that we already have, and even build off of that community that's already here. So that's the message that I'm trying to get out. How does that all play into the days, the ins and outs of these phases that we're going through? I don't know, but we're certainly trying. One of the good things, and the last thing I'll say, I will overtalk everything, is that we are benefiting from, as Addison said, from us joining forces, at least between the downtown and the old town. And Marjorie, with you, we're excited to move forward to also join forces with the business park as well. We want our message to be united. We want our, whenever we are advertising for Auburn and we're showing what Auburn's doing, we want it to look united. We want it to feel the same, to have the same tone. That's happening through Grow, which Toby, he sits on my board, and his firm's incredible, and they've done an incredible job on our websites and communication and all that. So we're benefiting from that now, but we literally just established this relationship maybe a week before Addison this all went down. So we're so young in this that we're trying to build that side of it too, so that we can communicate really effectively as a united front. So that's coming as well. And I think it's a good time for us to be able to start to show some more unity and some more community in the way that our districts communicate.
And the city can help us. The city can help us with that. Last time I talked to Toby, he mentioned that the Explore Auburn CA, if he could use that as the parent website, that would help us with what we're saying about all being cohesive in the way we look and appear and market to both our citizens and the people we're trying to bring here to spend their money. So
thank you for that. I know there'll be lots of discussion on that, and how I know right now we're very focused on COVID-19 and just getting businesses open and keeping customers safe, and I think how we continue to expand and return back to a destination location and all that is good conversation. So Jordan, appreciate those thoughts and those ideas. Marjorie, any other items? I mean, your business park association is unique because you have a lot more manufacturing out there.
Right, we're a little different of the businesses out here have stayed open in some way, reduced force. Some people have been furloughed, but you see cars in front of most of them. And so I don't believe we're having the same problems, except for supply line type stuff, which is beyond your control, that we are seeing in the smaller mom and pops in the other districts. Personally, I've been trying to get the word out on Facebook. I've got the Open in Auburn pages, and it's one way for a lot of people to see what the restaurants and the shops are doing as far as the curbside. Who's open for curbside, who's doing delivery, who does pickup. And I think that kind of things where we're supporting each other business to business is going to get us back on our feet. My biggest fear is if we don't get open is that we're losing businesses. And if we have empty storefronts, who wants to visit? The EDC, we've worked for, years to get all that, all those visitors coming up here. Getting these new businesses. And so whatever we can do together to open stores, make people feel safe. I love that idea, the gratitude thing, work together so that people spend their money, because I am truly fearful that if this goes on too long, we're going to lose a lot of restaurants. We're going to lose a lot of businesses in our core districts.
Great. Thank you, Marjorie, for that. I want to take an opportunity, see if any of the council members have any questions or any input. Cheryl, I'll start with you.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Berlant. I want to thank everybody for being here for one thing, because having us all together helps us combine our ideas, and having a meeting here, having a meeting there, that doesn't work. I like what you're doing, Jordan, having people come in your store one at a time, knowing you're in Old Town, knowing that you're available, that people can still go get a cup of coffee. And I like the idea of everybody making sure that they show their clients or customers that they can be trusted to walk into their establishment. It's so important because people are going to be a little concerned about that. I also like the idea that the Old Town and Downtown are working together. My dream has always been that would be a combined business association at some point. And I think we might have to just take advantage of this moment and use this moment to find something good in it by combining our resources and our advertising, our economic development, etc. So I too, Marjorie, am very concerned about all the hard work the EDC's done and not being able to continue forward like we were going. And but I think that together we'll be strong and we'll be able to manage to save the majority of our businesses. Yes, some of the businesses are going to fail. There's no doubt about that. And that's going to be sad, but we have to remain strong and keep moving forward. I get a lot of calls every day from businesses that aren't even listed on here. And so I've reached out to Sherry and her team to find out exactly what they can do and how they can do. So I really appreciate having that resource, Sherry, of your department. You guys have been great helping us muddle through this. So I really appreciate it. I appreciate Bob's great ideas that he's come up with. He's always got good ideas for economic development. And I love the idea of putting tables in the streets. I mean, let's do what we can to get our restaurants busy again. So I'm always been an optimist and I'm still an optimist. It's been a struggle because I have a couple of friends that are losing their business, and that's always difficult and you can't find answers for them. But these are unique times and I think we all have to keep working together. And I hope we can continue doing this meeting, Daniel. I think it would be helpful to all of us. Thank you very much, everybody.
Great, thank you, Cheryl. Sandy?
Yes, thank you. Well, I want to echo what Cheryl said. Thank you, everybody, for attending. Thank you for all your insight. And what I really would strongly agree with Cheryl is, and Addison, I think we do have to do something bold and different to get Auburn moving. And maybe tables in the streets is not a bad idea. It's a great idea, I think. Close down a street or two. That'll bring people in. We don't have the cars. So I'm open to relaxing our ordinances to make people feel comfortable and see that we are spacing and we're doing something different and we want people here. So thanks again. And I wish everybody luck. We will get through this. And I think I agree, Jordan, we have to be united and maybe quiet is the better way. Let's show people that we are spacing, we are wearing masks, and we're doing everything we can to keep Auburn safe, our people safe, but we want people to come in business to be open and to continue in that realm. So
Thank you, Sandy, for that. So, trying to wrap up here, future meetings and discussion, my thoughts on today's meeting. And again, I wish we could be face-to-face and be all in the same room, but obviously it's safer this way. But, I want to keep this, communication going, as it's been mentioned by all of us. Things do change every single day. Sherry's team was going down this road, and then the very next day, that road had a shift. And so we have to be dynamic. And I hear what you're saying, Jordan, about, we do have some kind of polarizing views on how to handle the COVID situation. But I think we as leaders need to stay together in a format so that we are on the same page and able to support each other, share resources, and communicate. I was thinking that this group could come back in 2 weeks. But a lot can change in 2 weeks. I don't want to waste your time. Allison, you mentioned, and as we all are, we're all wearing lots of hats. So I don't want to waste our time as you're trying to run your businesses. We could meet weekly. We could meet every other week. Are there any strong feelings on us getting together? I do have some items here before I open that up. I really want us to start thinking about how are we going to handle tourism? People coming from the Bay Area with or without a shelter in place. And what are we doing to keep our own residents and your employees safe with tourism that we rely on heavily? I think continued discussion on our city ordinances. And again, Bob, I'm going to ask you for Monday to jumpstart this discussion. But I really want our business leaders to let us know what is it that maybe we can help you by relaxing. We don't have all the state business code and other state law and regulations that we don't have authority over, but I think we need to keep having that open discussion. So I come back to future meetings. Coming back in 2 weeks, is that a healthy amount of time, or do you want to meet more frequently or less frequently?
I think 2 weeks is possibly too long. I think too much might change.
I agree.
So I think I'm willing to, barring something crazy, I'm open for meetings whenever we can. I mean, I think we got a lot of work to do, not just on COVID stuff, but on, what is, like you say, tourism. What is our common message? I mean,
Right.
beyond COVID, how do we get our message together? So I think, I think we could make big moves on that. And so I'm willing to open it up to whatever.
Yeah,
makes sense.
Danielle?
I agree with that. I think, right as everything's changing so quickly right now, especially potentially in our county, and we're developing a plan in our county, perhaps weekly meetings would be appropriate. And as things start to maybe mellow out, then we could talk about extending the time in between them. But I think it's totally appropriate to meet weekly now.
Okay, sounds good. I mean, I think that's consensus. Cheryl, did you have something you wanted to add?
I was just going to say, I think that we all be cognizant of the things that we're concerned about and come to the meeting with at least one question. We've had the overview. We know what's going on. We need to have some questions answered. So if we could all come with a question or two and get our questions answered, that would be great. And I think that you and Bob should work on setting up the meeting, because I think we have about 5 Zoom meetings next week with City Council.
Yes, we have 3 City Council meetings next week. We will set up a 4th without any problem. Just to be clear on why we chose this time, even though it's a Friday afternoon and we're trying to go into the weekend, this is the day where the cities are able to get together and talk, and this is when we get briefed ourselves on what's happening with the county. So I think it's very timely for us to as soon as that's done, be able to share and communicate that with you and with the general public. So I'll work with Bob and we'll get something going. But just plan on, we'll most likely keep this time frame. If you want to email me, if there's ideas, questions, like Cheryl said, we can kind of cut through the summary that we provided. I think we'll still kind of give an update of what's new that's reported to us. But now we need to really start targeting into the meat. And again, I leave it to you as the business leaders who are representing hundreds of small businesses. Let us know what we can do to help. And I've written some action items now down, and we'll follow up on some of those. And again, I just am appreciative of all your time, as we're all very busy. And this is new. This is dynamic. This is a pandemic that none of us have lived through. So there's no playbook, to help us in deciding communications and response and recovery. But I'm appreciative of this group working together. I know, and if anybody's going to do it, it's this team here. So thank you guys very much. Any final questions that anybody has? Otherwise, not seeing any, we'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting, and we'll have more information on our next meeting very soon here. So thank you guys. Have a great afternoon and have a good weekend.
Guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.